Hey guys, today we're going to be doing the Brawler class, and I thought we were getting a Brawler for this month. It turned out to be Hound, but he was a Warrior, so it looks like Kabam isn't doing the 2 bots per class anymore, like they have been in the past few months. So before we start, I want to say that all of the Brawlers are honestly really strong. They have really high HP, really high attack rating. Their kits are extremely good, and honestly, they're really hard to rate as number one. Honestly, any one of these guys can probably be number one. Just takes, whoever you have ranked up, whoever you like playing the most. So this one's gonna be tricky, so let's get started. At the number one spot, we have Motormaster. This guy is honestly an OG. He was the very first character that got his 4-star when his 4-star arena when he got released. So he's been around for quite a while. He's got some history. So his signature, King of the Road, at signature 40, every 20% of max health lost, he'll gain a 36.6% melee damage buff. And at 80% health lost, that's the equivalent of 146.4% extra melee damage. And his signature is honestly what makes him extremely powerful. I don't know if you guys, like, even as my rank 4 Motormaster, whenever he's at below the 80% health, and he has all those melee damage buffs, he can honestly do like almost over 1,000 damage per hit on his basic combo, which is absolutely insane. And a rank 5 Motormaster, I can only imagine it to be so much more. He also has Unstoppable when dashing. His heavy attacks inflict one of 3 effects, which is 19.4% armored attack debuff for 6 seconds, a 26.7% armor break for 6 seconds, and a 21.8% power debuff for 6 seconds. His special 1 is pretty simple, just a 2-hit combo. Special 2 allows him to gain an unstoppable buff for 4 seconds, and his special 3 deals 150% additional damage and inflicts 6 ram debuffs. The only downside of this is the 90% recoil damage, but that's fine. I mean, honestly, if you use a special 3 on most opponents, they're probably going to get one shot, so yeah, this guy is honestly like extremely strong. I know he doesn't have any like the debuff benefits like Grimlock or MV1 or Primal, but I feel like his signature in combination with the Unstoppable, his heavy debuffs and all that stuff makes him extremely good and makes up for lacking any debuff benefits. And just for that reason, he's honestly like really noob friendly, not in a bad way, but in a really good way. I still use him a lot. And honestly, I can continue seeing this guy being extremely strong and one of the top brawlers in the game. Up next, we have Optimus Primal. His signature isn't that just Prime. At signature 5, debuffs will expire 8% faster for each armor buff, and he'll gain 2% max health whenever a bleed expires, so he'll only heal off of bleeds, but the debuffs will expire quicker, and for a maximum of 10 armor buffs, they'll expire 80% faster, which is amazing. His armor buffs have 100% critical resistance and will generate an armor buff every 6 seconds if he has no armor buffs. So the characters that come to my mind right off the bat are Windblade and Drift. As long as Primal has an armor buff, these guys are never going to inflict a crit on him, and they'll never inflict a bleed on him basically, which is awesome. And his armor buffs also reduce damage from attacks by 2.5%. Whenever he's attacked, he has a 20% chance to gain an armor buff, max of 10 stacks, and of course at maximum stacks, that's a 25% damage reduction. His heavies convert all armor buffs into melee buffs, increasing melee damage by 12% for 6 seconds. This allows him to do quite a bit of damage. The more armor buffs he has, converts them into melees, and then honestly he just goes ham. And his heavy has an amazing animation. It just looks so strong. Pretty awesome heavy in my opinion. His special 1, if Primal received a bleed during the fight, he'll inflict a bleed, dealing 32% attack over 4 seconds. The strength increases by 20% for each additional bleed throughout the fight. His special 2 has a 50% chance per sword hit to inflict bleed, dealing 45% attack for 5 seconds. And finally, his special 3 grants him the maximum armor buffs, which is 10, and inflicts a 20% damage debuff on the opponent for 32%. That basically means is if the opponent were to try and hit you, that's basically a 45% attack reduction or damage reduction. And it's just an amazing amazing special 3. You know, granting yourself 10 maximum armor buffs, you just use a heavy, convert them all into melee buffs. That's 120% extra melee damage for 6 seconds. Just super strong. Or you can just hold on to them and, you know, have that 25% damage reduction throughout the fight. And honestly, it's one of the best special 3s, one of the best special 3s I've seen in the game. So just for that reason, I feel like Primal's overall kit, the way the debuffs expire on him, and, you know, he'll benefit off of bleeds same way MV1 does. Overall, just an amazing character with a lot of damage reduction, and he can output damage as well as by granting himself those melee buffs by using heavies. Overall, just a really solid, strong character. Up next, we have Grimlock. He's another character similar to Primal who can manage debuffs, damaging debuffs really well. So his signature is Dino Rage. At signature 5, he converts damaging debuffs into a 9.6 melee buff for 5 seconds. So without this signature, honestly, unduped Grimlock would be basically worthless. So I never used him for the longest time. Once duped, he does become an absolute beast at handling the debuffs, but without it, he's honestly like the worst brawler. Whenever he's attacked, he has a 12% chance to gain a 12.9% melee damage buff. His heavies renew melee buff duration, have a 56% chance to burn for 50% attack for 2 seconds. His special 1 has a 100% chance to burn, dealing 89.1% attack for 4 seconds. His special 2 increases melee damage by 16.2% for 5 seconds. His special 3 increases melee damage by 24.3% for 5 seconds, and it'll inflict burn, dealing 121% attack over 7 seconds. So even if you're not getting hit or, you know, getting any damaging debuffs on you to convert them into melee buffs, you can still use your special 2 and your special 3 to get a melee damage buff, and you can keep renewing it with the heavies. It's one of the only downsides, I think, to Grimlock is the fact that you have to keep renewing them. 5 seconds doesn't sound like a lot. It really isn't a lot. You have to keep an eye on, you know, your buffs and always use a heavy or a special in order to keep it renewed. It's definitely doable. I've seen my Grimlock. I think I've had the max stacks is like 9. I don't know if there is a max, but the most I've had are like 9 melee buffs going, and he can honestly do some pretty crazy damage. He's definitely, between him and Primal, they're definitely the go-to characters whenever it comes to dealing with characters that can do damaging debuffs, or, you know, those annoying mods like on raids or like during the spotlight missions. Definitely take Grimlock or Primal with you. But I definitely do think Primal is a little bit better than Grimlock, but, you know, you can make your own opinion. Grimlock, Primal, number 2, number 3, either one. Both of them are really solid characters to take with you. Up next, we have Optimus Prime, MV1. His signature, I'll take you all on. At signature 5, when dropped below 20% health, he'll gain 90% increased armor and 23% melee buffs for 7 seconds. This signature is really strong once it activates. The only downside is that it only activates once per fight, and it only lasts 7 seconds, and you can actually get one shot out of the signature activating. So if you take like a special 3 from like Motormaster or like an Ironhide, you know, some really strong burst damage that'll do more damage than your last 20% health, it'll never activate. So it can be kind of useless in that regard, but whenever it does activate, it makes you go pretty crazy in terms of damage. Blocking grants a 13.3% armor buff for 7 seconds. This is an amazing armor buff that you can constantly keep refreshed. Every couple seconds you're always blocking, so it'll constantly keep refreshed. His attacks have a 10% chance to increase melee damage by 43% for 4 seconds. While bleeding, he returns 28.5% of damage dealt as health, and 2 or more bleed stacks are converted into power. All of his specials have a 60% bleed chance on slash attacks, dealing 40% attack for over 3 seconds. His special 1 can do up to 150% melee damage based on lost health. So the lower the health of MP1, the more damage that special 1 is going to do. And I've seen a rank 5 Optimus Prime do close to 10,000 damage while getting a crit with the special 1. He can do some pretty insane damage with just the special 1 on low health. And his special 2 has a 30% chance to inflict bleed, and his special 3 also has bleed chance on the slash attacks. So overall MV1, he's still honestly like really good. Like I know I've put him like number 1 like previously, and the reason he's so low now, just because like the rest of the characters, like once they're duped, and Primal as well, once they're introduced, they're a bit better than him. He's still like top tier, like in my opinion, but definitely some better choices now. So I think between Motormaster, Primal, Grimlock, and MV1, you can probably switch them around, and you know, according to your playstyle or whoever you like the most, they can be number 1. But all 4 of these bots are definitely the top tier brawlers. And last but not least, we have Grindor, his signature Perforate. At signature 10, he has increased melee damage by up to 65.2% based on the opponent's stored power. Whenever he's attacked, he has an 8% chance to gain a 27% armor buff for 6 seconds and an 11% chance for a 30% crit rate debuff on the opponent for 6 seconds. He has 17% passive armor buff. His heavy crits can inflict burn, dealing an 80% attack over 6 seconds, but don't expect your burn or your heavy to be anything like Ironhide's. The brawlers in general, they don't have high crit chance, so Grindor's heavy almost never crits, so you're more than likely never going to see him burn. Every now and then it'll happen, but not often. His special 1 inflicts a 30% crit rate debuff on the opponent for 6 seconds, and his special 2 can do up to plus 40% damage based on the opponent's stored power, and it works great in combination with his signature. Sometimes you can see some pretty crazy damage come out of this guy, especially if your opponent has like over 2 bars of power filled. It can do some pretty nasty damage. And finally, his special 3 does plus 50% crit rate for missile hits, and it's only on the last hit on the animation for his special 3 where he shoots a missile, and even then it doesn't always activate, or he doesn't always crit. So if you're using Grindor, I would suggest just always saving up for a special 2. That's where like the majority of his damage comes from. But Grindor in general, I feel like the rest of the bots or the brawlers are a lot better than him. He's just extremely tanky, and for that reason I don't play him too often. I mainly just have him, or I would set him on my base as a defender on Harm Accelerator. I feel like that's where he shines. You know, he's super tanky, so he can extend the duration of the fight, inflict some more bleed damage on the opponent. But overall, not as strong as the rest of the bots. So that's going to be it for this video, guys. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you guys agree with me or how you guys would rank the brawlers. And next week we're going to be doing tech, so stay tuned for that one.